Hi everyone, welcome back to Polysil. In this video we are looking at Terrazzo. We're going to look at how to create your Terrazzo chips, how to create and mix these beautiful colours, and then how to put it all together to create these fun projects. For the Terrazzo I'm making in this video, I'm actually creating my colours in my liquid first. So in each of these pots I've got 30 grams of liquid, and for my aqua I'm using 2 parts green to 1 part blue, and these are very small tiny drops, so you really want to add your colour slowly just to make sure that you get the shade you want. In the pink, I've just added one single tiny, teeny, very tiny drop of red to create this gorgeous pink, and these colours together are so summery and beautiful. The next thing I'm going to do is calculate how much powder I need for my 30 grams of liquid, and I'm going to give that a thorough mix. Now you can still see lumps in this, but I'm doing my best to give it a really solid mix to get rid of all of those clumps of powder. To spread my Jesmonite AC100 across my surface, I'm using this polyurethane sheet. Now, Jesmonite doesn't stick to plastic, so anything really will work here. I just prefer polyurethane as it's nice and thin and it's really easy to get the Jesmonite back off when it comes to creating our chips. The thing I'm going to do here is just pour down my Jesmonite. This is the green teal aqua colour that I created, and I'm just going to use my lollipop stick to spread it thinly across my polyurethane sheet. Now you can use your hands. I will be using my hands in a moment. I actually find using my hands a lot easier than using a spreader, but this is what you're looking for. Now if you want big chunky chips, you can spread it thicker if you wish. I'm going for quite a thin spread of my AC100. I didn't make as much pink as I made with the turquoise aqua teal colour, so in this case I'm just going to use my hands to spread it thinly so that I've got a very similar volume to the blues, but it's probably not as thickly spread as the blue is. And again, using my hands, so easy and quick, and then I can just wipe my glove with a wet wipe or wash my hands. And here it is, we've got both of these colours now spread out. This is 40 minutes later. Now, Jesmonite pretty much cures in 30 minutes, but because this is so thin, I find that 40 minutes is an ideal time to come back and remove it from the sheet. Now, depending on what you've actually spread it on, I find this sheet really flexible and easy. So I simply pull it off, peel it back, and then I start to break the chips up. Now, this is really where personal preference comes into play. Not everybody likes small chips. You might want big chunky chips that are visible in your pieces. But in this video, we are going small Terrazzo pieces. And for that reason, I am breaking these up into a lot of pieces. And again, I want them mixed. So I'm quite happily chunking them together, breaking them together, crunching them together. Again, how you crunch your Terrazzo is up to you. Some people like to use a pestle and mortar. I find this creates a lot of dust, but that all depends on what you want your overall product to look like. So I am just using my hands, and honestly, after 40 minutes, it's very easy to break apart and snap. The longer you leave your Jesmonite AC100 spread out thin on your table, the longer you leave it, the harder it is to come back and break it up into your Terrazzo chips. I have left Jesmonite AC100 for an hour before, and it honestly was a lot harder to break up at that point. If you would like your Terrazzo pieces and your overall finished results to kind of have a uniform look, so you don't want some chips that are huge like these, and you don't want tiny little chips, I would suggest spending some time going through your mixture to make sure that you don't have any that are so dissimilar from each other. This step is purely optional. I do this to get rid of the dust. Now, when you create your Terrazzo chips, you are creating dust, you're creating teeny tiny chips, and sometimes even much bigger chips. So I just use a sieve to get rid of the dust. You could then go on and use a much bigger sieve to get rid of your smaller chunks or your medium-sized chunks, just depending on what size chunks you want in your overall piece. For the background of these terrazzo pieces, I'm using white Jesmonite, but of course I'm adding my white pigment to the Jesmonite to get a really nice, crisp white against these pink and blue shades, and it's definitely worth it. Jesmonite itself has got like a natural, almost cotton calico colour. It's not a white. So it's worth adding your white pigment if you want that white background. The next thing I've done is pack my chips in. Again, this is very optional. It's personal preference. I like to pack my chips in like this. This is the consistency I look for when I do terrazzo. The more chips you have in there, the more chips that can be guaranteed to be at the surface of your piece when it comes to demolding. If you don't put many chips in, you might find that when you demold, it's really very difficult to sand it back and expose those chips because you didn't really put enough in. So this is how I like to do mine. I like to really pack them in there. Clearly I put way too much in this mold, so luckily we're going to be able to use another mold in this video. The next step is tapping. I am tapping really hard on this piece. The more you tap, the less air bubbles you will have in the final result. And terrazzo is notorious for creating air bubbles on the surface because all of those chips kind of separate and they're not fully coated properly. So those are the two steps that are really important. Make sure they're fully coated, and then when you pour it in, tap like crazy. On the second one, we have this little amount left. It's not enough to fill this tray, so we're going to do half and half, and it is getting thicker at this point, so I have the luxury of being able to tap this really hard. So again, I am whacking it. I am slapping it down on my table to get all of that Jesmonite and those terrazzo pieces to really get down into that mold, into those lips. What I don't want at this point is any air pockets. So yeah, don't be afraid to really whack it to get rid of those air bubbles. I'm filling this up. I've gone on to create another mixture of part blue, part green. It doesn't exactly match the terrazzo, but it's going to complement it. And I'm just filling up the rest of the tray. Remember as well, if you're using terrazzo chips in your piece, you don't need to create the full amount of Jesmonite because those terrazzo pieces are taking up a lot more space than you realise. At this point, my terrazzo mixture is pretty much going off. It's quite hard at this point, so I am going to be careful now when tapping. I definitely do not want to now whack this against the table and be really harsh with it because the terrazzo section has pretty much cured. I don't want it to come away from the mold, and I don't want this other mixture to seep underneath it. So this is half an hour later. It all cures within 30 to 40 minutes on demold. This is the best time to demold as we do not want that to start to sweat in the mold, and I'm really happy because I've packed these chips in and on demold I can see them. I can already see them, so I know that sanding back is not going to take me hours. And yeah, I was really happy at this point. I'm loving the colours together as well, really loving them. Okay, sanding. I am starting with 150 grit. This is personal preference, this is optional. I like to start with a low grit, and this just gets most of the heavy work out of the way. If I'm honest, it gets most of the surface off quicker for me. If you start with a much higher grit, they will work, it just will take longer. It will take longer to get that surface off. The key to sanding your terrazzo and your Jesmonite in general, depending on what you're making, you don't always have to sand, but when you're sanding terrazzo, the key is water. Add lots of water. I am using waterproof wet dry sandpaper here, and like I said, I'm starting with 150 grit, and this was 4 minutes. So I have sped it up. Of course, we don't want to sit through that in real time, but this is 4 minutes, and already I am exposing those terrazzo chips, and I am so happy about it. I actually go on to finish off the whole piece, but make sure that when you are sanding, you add water at regular intervals. The water is going to help that sandpaper stick to the actual piece. What happens is we create this kind of thick gloopy gunk when you're sanding, so the water's just going to get that grip back. I also sanded the back of this piece, but I didn't spend long on it. I just wanted to get rid of the really major bumps so that this will sit flat when it comes to being used. And then I move on to the trinket tray. Same process. I'm starting on 150 grit sandpaper. After I've finished kind of exposing all of those chips, and I'm really happy, I finish off on a 1000. I don't even use the grits in between. Of course you can, depending on what you really want from your final product. For me, the 150 gets rid of the top surface, but it can leave scratches. So then I spend time using the 1000 grit, and this just gives them the smoothest finish. So for me personally, I just use the 2 grits. Like I said, it is a preference. Other people might find a different way of working, and look at these, they are gorgeous. The colors just scream summer, and yeah, I'm really happy with them. We will be talking about sealing and how to seal Jesmonite in another video, so be sure to click that subscribe so that you do not miss out on how we seal AC100. I will leave these for 24 hours now before sealing, but be sure to check that video out. We hope you found this helpful, and if you have done Terrazzo yourself, let us know in the comment section what your favourite method is. I'm in love with these results. I'm really happy actually to get very few, if any, air bubbles in these. That is something I am working hard to avoid, but majority of the time I do get 1 or 2. We can also talk about how to fix those holes, and that will also be a future video. So keep that bell turned on, and we will see you next time. Bye.